Beavers, moose, and moths don't seem to share too much in common. But when these tree-eating animals come together, it's triple trouble for one of Canada's oldest national parks. On the jagged coast of Canada's eastern shore, a delicate and diverse ecosystem thrives on the fringes of the continent. Welcome to the Wild Wild East. The Cape Breton Highlands is a vast and rugged landscape. Acadian forest bursting with Canada's trademark colorful leaves. An ancient plateau blanketed by a boreal woodland. And surrounding it all, the rough Atlantic Ocean. This primeval forest is the home of over 1,000 different animal species. But now, in spite of conservationists' best efforts, the Great North Woods may disappear altogether. In the 17th century, Europe's great explorers began crossing the Atlantic in search of wealth and resources. They found beavers, moose, and moths, and all the creatures of the Great North World. The forests and oceans of North America were a vast new source for fish, fur, and wood. During the Industrial Age, demand for timber to build ships, houses, and railroads intensified. Deforestation spread across Cape Breton and endangered the animals that called the Highlands home. Today, only 5% of Cape Breton's forests remain. Saw away long enough, and the ecosystem goes timber. The majestic moose is Canada's biggest four-legged celebrity. Size, strength, and perseverance make the moose synonymous with life in the harsh climate of the true north. Before the Europeans arrived, moose roamed freely across Cape Breton Island. The exact number is unknown, but historic records show that in the late 1700s, over 6,000 moose were hunted annually in Cape Breton. They weren't just killed for their meat and fur. Moose fat was a hot commodity, used to make candles and lubricate steam engines. But it was the moose's white-tailed cousin that dealt the final blow. Introduced to Cape Breton in the 1880s, the clear-cutting of the Industrial Age opened up new pastures for the deer to forage in. As they spread across the island, they brought a nervous system parasite. Harmless to the deer, but fatal to the moose. Finally, in the 1920s, hunting, habitat loss, and disease took their deadly toll. And the moose disappeared completely from Cape Breton Island. The ecosystem was transformed. Trees lost to loggers, species gone extinct from Cape Breton Island. At the beginning of the 20th century, the fate of the forest looked bleak. But then, in 1930, a glimmer of hope. The Canadian government passed the National Parks Act. This legislation protected large pockets of Canada's wilderness from clear-cutting. And in 1936, the Cape Breton Highlands National Park was established, preserving this important animal habitat. This protected area is 20 times the size of Manhattan, with 1.5 million fewer people and more than 100 million more trees. With their natural habitat safe, the park officials reintroduced the moose back to the boreal forest. In the 1940s, 18 moose from Alberta were trucked across Canada. Soon, a cow moose grazing for food with her calves became a familiar sight once again. Normally, moose are solitary animals, but mother and child share a special bond and are never far apart. She stays with her calves through their first winter. Her instinct is to defend them until they're large enough to protect themselves. Mom uses her excellent sense of smell to detect danger. But there are no airborne alarms here. In Cape Breton, moose have no natural predators. At one time, packs of wolves roamed the boreal forest, preying on calves and adults. But in the late 1800s, the wolf also fell victim to hunters and the almighty saw. Without any predators, these calves could live for 20 years. At home in the protected park and safe from their natural enemies, the moose's reintroduction in the 1940s got started on the right hoof. Weaving between the forest's hills and its valleys are rivers. They flow down the Highlands Plateau and bring water, the source of all life, to the creatures of the Highlands. The rivers here are home to the iconic beaver, the national animal of Canada and role model for workaholics around the world. Beavers build dams across sections of the river, which flood large parts of the forest, creating beaver ponds. The dams have major impacts on their environments. The largest on record is in Buffalo National Park in Alberta, discovered by a space satellite. It's twice the length of the man-made Hoover Dam. The beaver is the largest rodent in North America and can grow as big as a medium-sized dog. Beavers and humans have a lot in common. Both are warm-blooded mammals, and both drastically alter their environment to suit their own needs and are quick to protect their turf. A beaver is generally docile, but threaten its kingdom, and the beaver will attack by snarling, biting, and scratching with its powerful front legs. Its front legs have nimble paws and sharp nails, which it also uses to help build its home. Beavers' back feet are webbed, making them excellent swimmers. They are truly aquatic animals, with a protective membrane covering their eyes and flaps of skin to keep water out of their ears and nose when underwater. Beavers have 2 layers of thick fur, which keep them warm as they swim underwater during the winter. The extraordinary quality of the beaver's fur drove the colonization and economy of North America in the 1600s. Beavers barely survived their brief foray into fashion. From 1670 onward, the Hudson's Bay Company loaded 2 or 3 ships a year with beaver pelts, bound for England. In 1 year alone, over 130,000 beavers were killed for the fur trade. Beavers mostly eat leaves, buds, and inner bark of young woody plants that grow along their waterways. But they'll also eat water lilies and other aquatic vegetation. Beavers don't actually eat trees, though their tireless dam maintenance could give another impression. The beaver's work ethic is motivated by an unusual adaptation. Their teeth never stop growing. Chewing keeps them short and sharp. A beaver's most iconic and useful feature is its tail. Covered in scales and sparse hair, it serves many purposes. In the water, the tail primarily acts as a rudder. But it has another important function. Coyotes, bears, mountain lions, and wolves are the beaver's main predators. But the beaver is only vulnerable when it ventures onto land. Safe in the water, he sounds an alarm bell to alert the rest of the beaver family. Danger lurks nearby. The coyote's cover has been blown. So it's off to stalk its next prey. This tail slapping can also serve as a warning for beavers from other colonies to stay clear. This pond is taken. Biologists refer to beavers as ecosystem engineers because the wetlands they construct create a habitat for amphibians and other residents of the highlands. And the beaver's wetlands are a favorite foraging ground for hungry moose, who eat water lilies and other aquatic plants. They have adaptations to find food anywhere in their range, even underwater. Moose have a special valve that blocks the entrance to their nostrils, allowing them to submerge their mouths fully and pick out the foliage underneath. Out of the water, a moose can strip bare any part of a tree it can reach. They have no upper front teeth. They have 8 sharp incisors on their lower jaw, and a dozen pairs of molars that they use to chomp up the trees, the twigs, bark, pine cones, and also shrubs. Unlike deer, cows, and horses, these grazers don't eat grass. To survive, moose need the forest and the wetlands. In the decades following their reintroduction, the moose population began to grow, and their range began to spread beyond the park itself. It looked like the forest was ready to turn over a new leaf. But then, a new threat emerged from another voracious herbivore. This one is smaller than your pinky finger. The spruce budworm. Every summer, adult moths lay eggs on spruce and balsam fir, 2 of the most common trees in the highlands. The larvae spend the winter in their cocoons, and when they emerge in the spring, they're hungry. The newly born caterpillars feed off the tree's needles to fuel their metamorphosis into a moth. During outbreaks, there could be over 200 hungry spruce budworms feeding on one branch. Normally, their population is kept low by weather conditions, parasites, and predators like spiders and birds. But it's a delicate balance, and sometimes it goes off kilter. That's exactly what happened in the 1970s, when the spruce budworm destroyed a section of the Nova Scotian forest, half the size of the state of Vermont. The worst hit area was right here in the highlands. Spruce budworm outbreaks are cyclical. Ecologists believe they occur every 30 to 40 years. The forest should have recovered by now, but the burgeoning moose population feasted on the young trees, which slowed the forest's regeneration. The landscape of the highlands was an all-you-can-eat buffet of saplings for the moose. In turn, their population exploded. Since their reintroduction between 1947 and 48, the number of moose inside the park has grown from 18 to 1,800. Compared to other areas, there's now 4 times the number of moose in the highlands, and no wolves to reduce the population numbers. Moose are voracious herbivores. In total, all the moose in the highlands eat 4.5 dump trucks worth of vegetation every day. And now, the forest is transforming once again. Fall is the most active harvesting season for beavers. With winter on its way, they work overtime to fix up dams and lodges before their pond freezes. A recent rainfall has compromised the beavers' territory, and the dam has struck a leak. If it's not patched, the beavers' pond will drain. This will expose the lodge, and it will no longer protect the beaver and its family from terrestrial predators. Rushing water is the beaver's alarm bell. The sound triggers their instinct to build. An experiment where a recording of rushing water was played on dry land resulted in the beaver covering a stereo with sticks and mud in an attempt to silence the disturbance. The coming winter means more trees are needed to secure the beaver's lodge. Mud dredged up from the bottom of the river is used to hold the branches in place and acts as a sealant, keeping the lodge watertight. The beavers may be the hardest workers in the wild, wild east, but their non-stop construction is also reducing the survival of the trees and saplings surrounding their ponds. As beavers transform rivers into wetlands, they flood the forest, meaning beavers don't just chop down trees, they suffocate them too. But when the beavers leave and the pond drains, a fertile meadow remains in its place. Here, young trees bloom, but before they can mature, they're eaten by moose. As the moose population becomes more concentrated, a new danger has hit the highlands. Since an adult moose weighs about as much as a small car, collisions can be fatal for man and beast. But the overpopulation of moose is an even greater threat to the health of the highlands and the other animal species that call the forest home. Most of the animals of the highlands could not survive anywhere else in Cape Breton. They have adaptations to live in the forests here. Perched on low branches, an adult male spruce grouse blends perfectly into the background. Its plumage acts as camouflage. This is the grouse's only form of protection. And like the moose, budworm, and beaver, it feeds off the forest, mostly eating the needles from fir trees. If the Great North Woods can't recover, the spruce grouse is just one of over 1,000 species set to lose its home. And so, park officials are taking action to restore the balance of the highlands. Atop North Mountain, a strange structure stands in the middle of the park. It's called an exclosure, the opposite of an enclosure. It's designed to keep moose out. The trees inside are saplings, which a moose would devour in a single sitting. By fencing the moose out, park officials hope the trees inside will grow tall enough to survive the moose's appetite. The park currently has 2 exclosures, both built in 2007. The one on the Skyline Trail is the largest, covering an area the size of 9 football fields. It's estimated that over the next 5 years, plant life will grow 7 times as dense inside the protected areas. But the outcome is uncertain. It will be decades before the effects of the exclosures on the park can be measured. In the meantime, the rest of the forest will continue its struggle. With the exclosures only covering a small area of the park, their effect is contained. In the end, there's still too many moose in the Cape Breton Highlands. Fall for the moose is a special time of year, mating season. And it's called the rut. The scent of a female cow draws the bull moose from across the highlands. Cows are only in heat for 1 to 2 days a year. After that, they quickly lose interest. The stakes are high for the bull. If he doesn't manage to find a mate in the next few weeks, he'll have to wait another year. It's a rare social moment. This is the only time the solitary animals seek out company. But their union means that the moose population is set to grow again in the spring. So park officials are exploring every option to restore the natural balance of the moose population. There's even talk of bringing back an old nemesis, the wolf. But the effects of that management strategy still need to be studied. In places like Yellowstone National Park, wolves reintroduced in 1995 had quadrupled in numbers by 2004, but numbers have leveled off since then. Wolf reintroduction may be considered again in the future, but park officials feel they need to take immediate action to rein in the number of moose in the Cape Breton Highlands. In the fall of 2015, the park licensed hunters from the Mi'kmaq First Nation to kill 37 moose in the area of the forest most affected by hyperabundance. The cull has been a subject of controversy, but officials believe it's necessary to protect all the animals of the highlands. With a new year on its way, the future remains uncertain for the animals of the Cape Breton Highlands National Park. It's still not known what, if any, impact the moose cull will have. And there are signs that another spruce budworm outbreak may be on its way. But there's a glimmer of hope. The park's protected status keeps out the clear-cutters. And exclosures secure a small piece of the forest's future. The ultimate goal is simple: return the forest to its former glory and restore this important animal habitat. It's a balancing act in the wild, wild East.